Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer. Book 1. Bella. Preface. I'd had more than my fair share of near-death experiences. It wasn't something you ever really got used to. It seemed oddly inevitable, though, facing death again. Like I really was marked for disaster. I'd escaped time and time again, but they kept coming back to me. Still, this time was so different from the others. You could run from someone you feared. You could try to fight someone you hated. All my reactions were geared towards those kind of killers. The monsters. The enemies. When you loved the one who was killing you, it left you no options. How could you run? How could you fight? And doing so would hurt that beloved one. If your life was all you could give to your beloved, how could you not give it, if it was someone you truly loved? Chapter 1. Engaged. No one is staring at you, I promised myself. No one is staring at you. No one is staring at you. But, because I couldn't lie convincingly, even to myself, I had to check. As I sat waiting for one of the 3 traffic lights in town to turn green, I peeked to the right. In her minivan. Mrs. Weber had turned her whole torso in my direction. Her eyes bored into mine, and I flinched back, wondering why she didn't drop her gaze or look ashamed. It was still considered rude to stare at people, wasn't it? Didn't that apply to me anymore? Then I remembered that these windows were so darkly tinted that she probably had no idea that it was even me in here, let alone that I caught her looking. I tried to take some comfort in the fact that she wasn't really staring at me, just the car. My car. Sigh. I glanced to the left and groaned. 2 pedestrians were frozen on the sidewalk, missing their chance to cross as they stared. Behind them, Mr. Marshall was gawking through the plate glass window of his little souvenir shop. At least he didn't have his nose pressed up against the glass. Yet. The light turned green, and in my hurry to escape, I stomped on the gas pedal without thinking. The normal way I would have punched it to get my ancient Chevy truck moving. Engines snarling like a hunting panther, the car jolted forward so fast that my body slammed into the black leather seat and my stomach flattened against my spine. Ugh! I gasped, as I fumbled for the brake. Keeping my head, I merely tapped the pedal. The car lurched to an absolute standstill anyway. I couldn't bear to look around at the reaction. If there had been any doubt as to who was driving this car before, it was gone now. With the toe of my shoe, I gently nudged the gas pedal down 1/2 millimetre, and the car shot forward again. I managed to reach my goal, the gas station. If I hadn't been running on vapours, I wouldn't have come into town at all. I was going without a lot of things these days, like Pop-Tarts and shoelaces, to avoid spending time in public. Moving as if I were in a race, I got the hatch open, the cap off, the card scanned, and the nozzle in the tank within seconds. Of course, there was nothing I could do to make the numbers on the gauge pick up the pace. They ticked by sluggishly, almost as if they were doing it just to annoy me. It wasn't bright out, a typical drizzly day in Forks, Washington, but I felt like a spotlight was trained on me, drawing attention to the delicate ring on my left hand. At times like this, sensing the eyes on my back, it felt as if the ring was pulsing like a neon sign. Look at me! Look at me! It was so stupid to be self-conscious, and I knew that. Besides my dad and my mum, did it really matter what people were saying about my engagement? About my new car? About my mysterious acceptance into an Ivy League college? What about the shining black credit card that felt red hot in my back pocket right now? Yeah, who cares what they think, I muttered under my breath. Miss? A man's voice called. I turned and then wished I hadn't. 2 men stood beside a fancy SUV with brand new kayaks tied to the top. Neither of them was looking at me. They both were staring at the car. Personally, I didn't get it, but then I was so proud I could distinguish between the symbols for Toyota, Ford and Chevy. This car was glossy black, sleek and pretty, but it was still just a car to me. I'm sorry to bother you, but could you tell me what kind of car you're driving? The tall one asked. A Mercedes, right? Yes, the man said politely, while his shorter friend rolled his eyes at my answer. I know, but I was wondering, are you driving a Mercedes Guardian? The man said the name with a reverence. I had the feeling this guy would get along with Edward Cullen, my fiancé. There was really no way getting around the truth of the wedding just days away. They aren't supposed to be available in Europe yet, the man went on, let alone here. While his eyes traced the contours of my car, it didn't look much different from my other Mercedes, said Anne to me. What did I know? I briefly contemplated my issues with words like fiancé, wedding, husband, etc. I just couldn't put it together in my head. On the one hand, I had been raised to cringe at the very thought of the poofy white dress and bouquets. But more than that, I couldn't reconcile a staid, respectable, dull concept like husband from a concept of Edward. It was like casting an archangel as an accountant. I couldn't visualise him in any commonplace role. Like always, as soon as I started thinking about Edward, I was caught up in a dizzy spin of fantasies. The stranger had to clear his throat to get my attention. He was still waiting for an answer about the car's make and model. I don't know, I told him honestly. Do you mind if I take a picture with it? It took me a second to process that. Really? You want to take a picture with the car? Sure. Nobody's going to believe you if you don't get proof. Okay. Fine. I swiftly put away the nozzle and crept into the front seat to hide, while the enthusiast dug a huge professional-looking camera out of his backpack. He and his friend took turns posing by the hood, then went to take pictures at the back end. I missed my truck, I whimpered to myself. Very, very convenient. Too convenient that my truck would wheeze its last wheeze just the weeks after Edward and I had agreed to our lopsided compromise. One detail of which was that he would be allowed to replace my truck when it passed on. Edward swore it was only to be accepted. My truck had lived a long, full life and then expired from natural causes. According to him, and of course I had no way to verify his story or to try and raise my truck from dead on its own. My favourite mechanic. I stopped that thought cold, refusing to let it come to conclusion. I listened to the men's voices outside, muted by the car walls. Wanted it with a flamethrower in the online video. Don't even pucker the paint. Of course not. You could roll a tank over this baby. Not much of a market for one over here. Designed for the Middle East diplomats, arms dealers, and drug lords mostly. Thinks she's something, the short one asked in a softer voice. I ducked my head, tubes flaming. Huh, the tall one said. Maybe. Can't imagine what you'd need missile-proof glass and 4,000 pounds of body armour for around here. Must be headed somewhere more hazardous. Body armour? 4,000 pounds of body armour? And missile-proof glass? Nice. What happened to good old-fashioned bulletproof? But at least it's made some sense. If you had a twisted sense of humour. It wasn't like I had expected Edward to take advantage of our deal, to wait on his side so he could give it so much more than he would receive. I'd agreed that he could replace my truck when it needed replacing, not expecting that moment would come too soon, of course. When I had been forced to admit that the truck could become no more than a still-life tribute to classic Chevys on my curb, I knew his idea of a replacement was probably going to embarrass me, make me the focus of stares and whispers. I'd been right about that part, but even in my darkest imaginings, I had not foreseen that he would give me two cars. The before car and the after car, he explained, when I'd flipped out. This was just the before car. He told me it was a loaner and promised that he was returning it after the wedding. It had made absolute sense to me now, until now.